We'll edit it out.
We got to hold it.
Okay.
We'll edit what our faces out. We got to hold.
Look at this hair. We're
Yours
frazzled.
or mine? Yes, we're
Mine.
frazzled.
Oh my gosh. This is what I've been walking around looking like today.
Are you recording right now?
Yeah, we're recording.
Oh, we're both frazzled. It has been a hell of a week. This last week of this legislature. Oh my goodness.
You've been holding it down here, sister.
Yeah, trying to witness and record and post on my Substack so people know what's going on. But I missed my girlfriend here. I'm getting a little closer to you so you can see us in this
I realized we're recording this way.
Yeah,
we like
that's
to do
our
it
normal.
this way. Oh, this
I'm
is
not
our
pushing
normal.
you away from
Oh
you.
no! What are we gonna do? I recorded everybody else in the vertical.
So you can do us in the vertical. I'll just get closer to you. Don't worry about it.
All right, we'll go back this
good.
way.
We're fine.
We're scrappy.
I love you. We're scrappy. I love you.
So I just mentioned that we recorded everybody else like this because we're down here at the Capitol. It's the last day. We did get to speak to some of our favorite Dems, and they got to share some thoughts with us, and we want to share those with you.
Yes. Because you hear a lot from us, obviously, the angelic dissenters on this, but they've been truly in the, been watching them in the fishbowl from the gallery as they've been dealing this week with all these bills, trying to get through the Senate and the House on the floor. And so, but they're down in this pretty toxic environment where it can get very testy for them. And where a lot of times they're not even called on, to ask a question. So it's nice to be able to ask them, what's been the worst, and is there any stuff that's been good, and what's the hope going forward for folks? Because we want you to stay engaged. And I think when you hear them, don't you? You'll be like, okay, if they can do this,
that's right.
We can do our part over this next months leading up to the election.
That's right. Okay.
Yeah. Let's do a takeout from you though.
Well,
what's your takeout here?
My takeout was I was really impressed with how many good things these lawmakers saw, and it's just a reminder that they're doing the work, and so they're seeing the day to day, and there are wins for them, right? We're seeing maybe some bigger picture things, and so when we are zoomed out and seeing all the horror, we're missing some of actually the really good things that these lawmakers are working on. So that was a really hopeful for me point that was made.
Yeah, and none of them are like, we're laying down our hats and walking away and they were like strategizing about next year, what can we do next year? What can we bring forward? And that to me, I'm exhausted. I'm like, I'm ready to lay my head down. But that energizes me, and I hope it will you all as well. That's right. To stay in it, stay in the resistance, and stay in the promoting the world that we want to live in, and we want our children and grandchildren to live in.
Right. And just because the session is over, the podcast isn't over. We've got more. We've got more. We've got more things coming.
We do.
Right? We just might have to change our bio. But the angelic dissenters aren't going anywhere.
We're not.
Okay, so Gloria, today's the last day of the session. Last day. Michelle, what was the question you had for Gloria?
Yeah, so we just wanted you to riff a little bit on sort of what have been the toughest moments here, and what have been if there's good moments, something about that, and maybe why should people have hope now going forward?
Well, okay, definitely reason for hope, and the reason for hope is we killed so many of the really bad bills. And that's a tribute to people coming up here, people letting their legislators know what they think. But I can tell you that yesterday was one of the hardest days. There was the resolution about honoring a plantation, and they felt like, well, just removing the word plantation made it okay. And then right after that, we had another racist bill from Rep. Mayberry, followed by a bigoted bill by Rep. Mayberry. And literally yesterday, I felt like I had been sitting at a Klan meeting all day long. I mean, I felt like I was at a Klan meeting. You could have cut the racism and the bigotry with a knife.
Can you say something about what those bills were, just like to give people an idea?
I'm trying to remember. Yeah. One of them was the honorifics.
Yes.
About you can misgender people if, not calling people the name they want to be called. This came from a pastor who is a pastor who doesn't believe what the Bible says about loving everyone and loving your neighbor? And we all know that we want to treat people the way we want to be treated. And so why would you not call people the name they want to be called? There's no reason for that. As a school teacher, when I taught little kids, it would be funny because a kid would say, whoever the Disney princess of the month was, they would say, oh, call me Ariel or whatever. And I would call them Ariel because that's what they wanted. Who cares? And, when I can remember. But, calling people what they want to be called is just being nice and kind and respectful.
Basic.
And to refuse to call people what they want to be called is vile, and it's hateful, and it's sick. And to say you're a pastor and that's what you're going to do. But honestly, the bill right before that was a racist bill, and I can't remember in my head
was it
what
driver's
it was.
license? Was that the driver's license bill?
I don't think it was
test?
a driver's
No.
license because I don't think he had, I think it was his bill. I think he had 2 in a row, as I recall. But he had multiple racist pieces of legislation this year. And last year, he had both of the getting rid of DEI.
Yes.
And it was requiring universities to give a report that they didn't do anything DEI. And the sad part of this is he doesn't know what DEI is.
Right.
He thinks DEI is affirmative action, which it is not. DEI is less about hiring policy and more about making your employees all feel respected, whether they're veterans, disabled, black, female, whatever, neurodivergent, who knows? And that's about making sure all your employees are honored and respected. But they're so dumb. They don't even know the definitions of these policies because they've never worked anywhere besides being in an elected office or this fella in a church that must not really believe in the actual Bible and what it teaches.
So why should people have some hope?
So people should have some hope that a lot of this crap didn't pass. A lot of their agenda didn't pass. We just stopped a sneaky little extra voucher bill they put on. We did expand vouchers, but we stopped them from expanding it even more at the last minute. These people are so shady and so deceitful and so hateful. I honestly don't know how they get through the day. I think that, I don't know how they leave the house. They're so afraid of everything that doesn't look like them, believe like them, worship like them. It's remarkable to me how scared they are, and how if something's not a white cis male, they don't know what to do.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much. And thank you for being our first guest on our podcast this year.
Absolutely.
Thank you, Rep. Johnson. Enjoy your time off.
Yeah.
Can I hear?
You can look at both of
Okay.
us. Thank you so
All right.
much, Rep. McKenzie, for joining us and the Angelic Dissenters. And Michelle's got a question for you as session's ending.
Right. So really what we wanted was kind of what were the really toughest moments down here during this session? What were some good things that might have happened? And then what kind of hope would you offer to folks going forward who've been paying attention?
Well, unfortunately, there was a lot more bad than good in terms of the tone and tenor of the legislation. They did a whole lot of Charlie Kirk bills. Like Charlie Kirk was somehow a person that didn't make these racist statements. That Charlie Kirk only wanted to talk about freedom of speech. He was much more than that, much worse than that. And so, for them to bring so many pieces of legislation was just unfair. They're and the second thing, and it's kind of tied in, they're really doing the bidding of folks in Washington, D.C., the MAGA agenda, the Charlie Kirk stuff, but then also all of this anti-immigration legislation that they kept throwing in our face. And at the end of the day, they're a vital part of our economy.
Amen.
They are tax-paying folks that may or may not be here legally or illegally, but he ran on the premise of we're going to arrest the worst of the worst. And what did they do? Show up at the Home Depots, go to people's houses of worship, and just take, God-fearing people that just want a better lot in life and arrest them, separate families, wanted to count kids and kick them out of schools. And so there's just a lot of that going on. And then the whole voucher scam. And it really is a scam because it was pitched as, we want to help those struggling schools. We want to get your kid out. And it really is the rich and almost rich people that are taking advantage of this. You know, if I had to point to a positive, and there were a few positive, but the one big one is, and this piece of legislation that I've carried for the last 6 years, but Senator Hackberry and Leader Camper were able to pass a piece of legislation that allowed people that previously did not have the right to vote back. Because a lot of them, Tennessee was the only state that said, if you have court costs, it's mainly child support, you can't vote. And so they were able to get that across the finish line. That's just going to help people feel better about it. Every time I go vote, I mean, even before I became elected official, it's something good. It's one of those things that make me feel like I'm a part of the fabric of this county, city, state, and country. So to allow thousands and thousands of Tennesseans the right to vote is going to be a good thing.
And that was folks who, at some point in their lives, probably oftentimes when they were young, served time in prison, and then coming out, they were totally disenfranchised for the rest of their lives. So those are the folks you're talking about now, that as long as they were paying child support, I believe it's for a year, as court ordered, then they could go ahead and apply to get the right to vote back. That was a great bill.
Yeah, that's a great bill. And like I tell people, you could be a deadbeat dad, a deadbeat mom, but if you hadn't been incarcerated, you still had the right to vote. Just because these people committed a crime, but they paid their debt to society, and they need to have those rights restored. So yeah, so you know, what I'm hopeful for is one that we're gonna. I make no qualms to think we're going to be in the majority in January. But I'm hoping that we put some chinks in the armor, that they get the message, that their message is not a message of Tennessee, and it's not a message that's uniting us. So if we can turn a couple of seats, I think some of these legislators that have to, on the Republican side, they have to hold their nose to vote for these things. We're going to see the light. It says they can act like human beings. They can act like they love their neighbors. That they can live out that creed and not get kicked out of their party. So that's what I'm hopeful for, that we're going to have a good midterm, both nationally, but really here in the state. And if we turn a couple of these seats over, I think we'll be in a better situation.
Thank you so much. Rep. McKenzie, thank you so much.
Thank you.
So you're asking the same questions, right?
I am,
Yeah.
yes.
Okay.
So we have 3 questions, which is, one of them was, like, what's some of the worst stuff that's gone on this session? What are some good takeaways that have happened here? And then what kind of hope do you offer to folks going forward who've been paying attention to Tennessee politics?
Absolutely. So I think some of the worst things that we saw this session in particular dealt with immigration. I think you had a slate of maybe 11 to 15 bills that tried to, in essence, take over federal policy and implement at the state level to separate, perpetuate the xenophobia, target people who don't have English as a first language. And I think collect data on kids in schools. And so I think those things are probably some of the worst that we saw. And none of those fed more people, housed more people, provided healthcare access, and met the needs that many people in this state need for us to do. I think from a hope-giving perspective, there was some legislation that we saw that was a little bit more bipartisan. One in particular, I think, was our veterans. So, I'm in Shelby County. We've got the most veterans of any county in the state of Tennessee.
I had no idea.
We do 52,000 of them. But they were missing, I would say, have had stolen $300 million a year from the federal government because we don't have enough veteran services officers to get their benefits. And our veterans are disproportionately older, black, African-American men.
Say that again, that the reason why they're missing their benefits in Shelby County in particular is why?
We don't have enough veteran services officers, or VSOs, to get people connected to the benefits. And so there's a bill passed here with Running Glenn and there's bipartisan legislation that made us study, forcing a study to happen on VSOs and the disparities, so that hopefully we can get resources and legislation in the future, my colleagues can, to get us the money there.
That's terrific.
I think that when you think about hope, it's reciprocity, right? We have a responsibility to try and give each other hope. And I think the showing up is what matters. And I've said this probably once or twice, but the fact that we keep being there we keep speaking up, but that's not what they anticipate. That's not what they expect. That's not what they want, right? And yet here we still are. And that is how we reclaim our responsibility, our place in democracy. We make these places less scary, and we take ownership of them as ours. These committee rooms are ours. Right? This building is ours. And so I have a right to show up here, to speak here, to record here, to demand more from the people who are supposed to serve here. And I think a lot has happened in the dark in Tennessee politics over the last decade. But really since the horrible tragedy of the Cumberland School shooting, the expulsion, I feel people are paying a lot more attention. And that attention is really important to holding people accountable and even stopping them from doing some of the worst that they could do. And I've shared this, but the collecting data on immigration status started off as denying kids who were immigrants access to public schools. But thousands of people showing up, writing, sending emails, speaking up, right? It forced them to change that legislation. That didn't happen because they wanted to. But we have to, that's what gives me hope. The places where we reclaim our power, those are the places where change can happen. And we just have to stay, we cannot get weary and well doing it, even though that's hard not to do. But staying persistent is really going to pay off for us in the end.
I want to do a quick follow-up if I could. Actually, 3 little pieces. One has to do with interesting showing up. Memphis is a place that's pushed back, but Memphis is now has continued to be a place where they, brought in all kinds of law enforcement around supposed, immigrants who are criminals, right? So you've had to take over, right, by many different kinds of police forces, and also now this effort to take over the public school system. Even where the data shows there's plenty of other counties that have worse outcomes educationally than Memphis Shelby County. And so you're running for Congress, and you'll be representing, hopefully, and maybe have a different kind of impact. Will you say something about how people can support your campaign, get engaged in your campaign? Yes. That'd be great.
We need all the help. Go to votejustinj.com, votejustinj.com. You can donate. You can sign up to knock doors or the phone bank. I was calling people yesterday when I was in the car. It was very fun. And I was like, hey, this is Justin G. Pearson. I saw you signed up to volunteer, just confirming, we're good. They're like, wait, what? It's really it. So, yes, we will call, we check in, because we want people. We need it. We don't have corporate PAC money. We're not backed by the billionaire class and corporations like my opponent is. So we need people to really show up for us. And if that's coming to Memphis and knocking doors, if that's doing a couple of hours on the phone a week, it makes a substantial difference. And I think that's also giving me hope, right? Seeing people power, working, and it's functioning and operating, and it's standing up to tyranny, because that's really what it is. When government begins to take over and undo democratic processes, that's tyranny.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
It's literally why the one flag that says "Do not tread on me." It's not a statement to other people; it's a statement to government. Right? Do not abuse your power over me. And when you see them taking over our school system, $2.3 billion budget in the hands of whoever the Republican Party wants to now run our schools, 100,000 children, 13,000 employees, no longer having an elected body that is responsive to them is deeply troubling for democracy, and it is a show, in my opinion, of the tyranny of government over the people. Same thing with the Memphis Unsafe Task Force. The Trump administration, governability, and too much capitulation, honestly, locally, has led to 800 families being impacted negatively by these immigration waves that, again, used to be a civil matter. Now they're being considered criminal. And the majority of them, I think 98% or something, never had any criminal background.
Exactly.
And so we have to be realistic about the root causes of problems. We have a broken immigration system. Congress should fix it. I'm going to Congress, and that's one of the things I'm focused on. Right?
Yes.
But it isn't the state's responsibility. It isn't the city's responsibility to start criminalizing folks, making kids scared to go to school, parents worried to go to the grocery store. What are we doing? And so the fabric of our community is also being torn asunder by those types of actions.
Well, thank you so much for running for office and showing up here at the legislature and constantly speaking of realism into these halls of challenging rhetoric.
Absolutely.
Yes.
It's the honor of my life. Keep being an angelic dissenter. I appreciate y'all so very much. Seriously.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
It's not.
bearing witness. I like to think of myself as a caretaker of the decline, and you are kind of a bystander of the decline, if you will.
Exactly. Yes. That's we're all going down together. So good company. Thank you very much. Real quick, we just wanted you to say something about like what were the worst things that you've seen happen here this session. What are some of the best things that you saw coming out of it? And then what kind of hope would you offer to folks who are paying attention?
Yeah, I mean, the worst things, I think, is the collective denialism up here that nothing is wrong, and there's no acknowledgement of these systems that are at their breaking point. And I think that will be absolutely exacerbated with the next administration. But as Rebecca Soltnet wrote, and I wrote about my Substack, it's a time of great nightmares and great transformation. And so I have seen ruptures in their coalition. You all were privy to those during the Agricultural Committee when we saw rural residents from Scott County drive all the way up here, days, weeks, highlighting that they didn't want this corporate landfill in their backyard in their beautiful community. And I think we're going to see more and more of that because there's just going to be more and more corporate, more of our corporate overlords kind of infusing themselves into daily life. Coupled with the Duck River protections. Yes. And that was a coalition of environmentalists and conservative conservationists. And so for me,
local people.
And local people, yes. And then in our personal organizing within our office, just observing these ruptures when it comes to how poor white families are interacting and navigating the state apparatus. And so around DCS, we launched a petition asking families to sign this petition if they wanted to reform. We've had over 450 families across the state of Tennessee. And now we are organizing with them. We're putting on a day of legal support, direct legal support in June for them. And we have been pitching to them, become single issue voters on this issue in particular. Yes. We've also seen some movement within, not necessarily policy, but I think in the coalition of Republican constituencies that want to hold the Department of Corrections accountable. And so we saw a headway when it came to an advisory committee that put families of those who are incarcerated, not necessarily in a decision-making position or in a position of co-governance of what I would like to see, but there is some headway there, and there is some acquiescence or some at least acknowledgement here that the private prison industry is a major issue in the state of Tennessee. So, and then what gives me hope, I think, this Thursdays are my day. We call them seminar, where my social work interns, we meet in my office for hours, and the first hour of the day is always talking big themes, big picture, exciting things. And so I made them watch the Alabama Solution, the documentary, and in that they came today, and I was like, how would you restructure? What does the restructuring or the reform look like for the Department of Corrections? And what are your big ideas, right? And so they're like, all right, well, we're going to launch a survey, and we're going to, within the office, and you're going to be the first representative that's doing an inmate survey. And I'm like, okay, but then where does that lead? And they're like, okay, 4 to 6 years, we're going to have, the inmates organized. So Gen Z, they're eager, they're excited, and they will take this. Unfortunately, they have inherited such a cosmic dystopian nightmare, and for us to help them build the skill sets necessary to move forward in the world and to rebuild the state, this country, once it collapses. So, and I think I've been, yes, I love hyperbole because I'm a theater kid, as what Fox News, and apparently it was an insult during the congressional. There's a picture of me and Mom Donnie in the New York Times next to each other, calling us theater kids, which is the new far right insult.
Love that.
But I love hyperbole, but in that, it is really going to collapse. It's going to look very different to different people, and that's what's wild in our state is there are privileged white folks who will be completely immune to what is happening right now, are now and will be. So I think as these kind of structures crumble, how are we building permission structures for people to come into our movement, and for there not to necessarily be electoral outcomes, but for them to understand, no, you need a state government that is functional, because that state government is going to be the only thing between you and a corporation and your corporate overlords putting you in an Amazon factory. It's either jail or an Amazon factory in the next 10 years. And that's the offering that Marsha Blackburn and the Republican gubernatorial candidates are offering us. So there is you always have to imagine and I think of Reverend Kelly E. Miller Smith. I'm sorry, I'm butchering his name. It's been a long day. But the first pastor of First Baptist Capitol Hills, who said, "Stay tuned for another world." So I think about that often.
Thank you, Afton.
Yeah.
Thank you so much.
Yeah.
Thank you, Afton.
The three things we'd love you to just talk about are, what are some of the things that have happened here that are most upsetting to you? What are the things that actually are some good things that might have come out of this session? And then how is it that you would talk to other people about why they should still have hope?
So I think a lot of the anti-immigrant bills that have passed. There's not one bill, right? It's many. Actually, it's less than there was potential to be.
True.
There's about 40.
That's right.
And I think a handful of them have gotten through. I think that's the most upsetting because I think immigration is just a core foundation of our country.
Yes.
So
Our ancestors.
and for me, it's personal because I am an immigrant. So to me, I think those are the most upsetting ones. In terms of positives, I don't think there's anything that. Well, there's one more. The second one that I think is bad is everything that happened around vouchers. I think that's terrible.
Why?
Because constitutionally, we are required to fund a public education, and we're not doing that. This is getting us closer to privatizing, and who is going to have access to an education? It's not going to be everybody. It's going to be a select few, and it's creating a second class of citizens, future citizens that are, going to be our electorate, that are going to be our workforce, that are going to be our future. So to me, that's why it's upsetting, because we're not following our Constitution, first of all. So that should be upsetting. But it scares me for the future of the kids of our state. So I think those are the two things. And I think the only positive, I think it's a combination of those two, is the fact that so far we haven't seen a 793 get out or something that will strongly challenge Plyler.
Yes.
Which
Could you say something about 793 for people who may not have followed that?
So the Trump administration and other groups have made it their mission to have a challenge to Plyler. Plyler versus Doe was the decision that established that every child should have access to a public education without requiring proof of citizenship, without requiring tuition to be paid for a public education. And that was established in the 80s. So there's been several states that have put forth legislation to eventually take something to the Supreme Court to overturn Plyler.
Right.
And I think there's been different ways that they have tried to achieve it. Some of it through vouchers and making amendments through voucher bills. I think the voucher bill in itself could also, pose a challenge to Plyler. But I think people were paying attention and showed up and spoke out, and we saw that it had a really difficult path forward, and it may have passed, but it was barely through the House, barely through the Senate. The two versions did not agree, and it just made it really hard and cumbersome for them to get it through. Then they tried to attach it to the voucher bill, and that didn't work because they would have lost that vote. So then they pulled it off, and so I think that just shows that our consistency has worked, and that our advocacy has worked, and that we do have allies that are Republican, because in a state that is as much a majority as it is here in Tennessee, we were able to hopefully get out of session without having that. And that's a huge win. That is a huge win, not only for Tennessee kids, but it's a win for all kids in the entire country.
Yes.
Yes. And we should be very proud of that.
Yes, absolutely. Yes. And the hope? The hope is?
that we need to carry that energy into these other spaces as well.
Love it.
Um,
Yes.
so I think that elections have consequences, but I think votes in here also have consequences, and we're in an election year. The fact that they are members there that took 3 votes on vouchers that said 3 times. I mean, last year during special session, we had members that had never voted for vouchers vote for vouchers in really key districts where they will face challengers. Montgomery County is one of the districts. Memphis, there's 2 districts in Memphis from people that Representative Mark White being one of them. He's standing right there. That those people would consistently no, and for the first time flipped to yes votes, and not only did it once, but did it multiple times. And I think that gives people, because people are paying attention. And I think this year we're seeing countrywide what is happening in terms of electoral performance, and that should really scare them. I think they think that they're going to get away with it, and I think it's up to us to show that that's not going to be the case.
Absolutely. And that's what people need to do. Turn out to vote, turn out and work on campaigns in their local communities, run for office.
Yes.
Support you all in your efforts.
Absolutely.
Yes. Thank you so much for taking time with us.
Thank you.
Yeah, thanks for what you keep doing down here.
Yeah, 2-1.
Hey, Heidi. Thanks for taking some time. Sunny Day just happened here at the legislature, and we wanted to do a quick interview with you. And the 3 questions we just would love for you to address, which is, what was the worst of what happened this session? What was the best? If there were any good things that actually happened, and then what hope do you offer to folks about staying engaged and why to stay engaged and what to look forward to?
Yeah, so the worst thing that happened this session is almost hard to describe, because there was an infrastructure that was obviously being built by lots and lots of bills that were meant to set our state up so that the MAGA can do what they want. And we know, volunteered through Cameron Sexton going up to DC and things to be the leading MAGA state. And so these bills taken in isolation might seem like they're doing something specific, but when you actually look at them comprehensively, which actually we don't even really have our heads around yet, you see that there is the attempt to set up an infrastructure which really has to do with creating a police state. That sounds insane, but let me just tell you, that is what's happening.
Absolutely.
And so we saw a lot of control being taken away from, a lot of preemption, a lot of control being taken away from our cities on all kinds of issues. The airport authority, the boring tunnel situation, the tourist development zone, the NES, our utilities, and certainly policing.
Yes.
We saw power being given to the AG to be able to do things.
Attorney General?
Yes, the Attorney General, right, to be able to do things that he shouldn't be able to do, because we need checks and balances, obviously, to protect ourselves.
Yes,
and we saw violations of our First Amendment rights, and we saw, of course, the typical anti-trans things and all of the slate of hate stuff, which I always find to be the most brutal.
Right.
Now, in terms of what was good, I think what was good is that we had an absolutely phenomenal Democratic caucus fighting for us, and it made a difference. And I know that's hard to see, but it really did. So I would encourage people to go out and fight hard to flip some more seats. The last seat that we flipped in the state was my seat, and we flipped it in 2020, and we've got to flip some more seats because, guys, we've got to get people up in the legislature who care about Tennesseans and who are not capitulating to corporations to the detriment of the people that we serve.
Amen to that. So, yes.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
And a little hope piece. I heard you say this is what we need to do.
Yes, and the little hope piece is that we are seeing across the country, obviously, that things are shifting. Let's not let Tennessee sit that out. You know, my good friend and colleague Senator Charlene Oliver always says Tennessee is not necessarily a red state. It is a state that does not vote. So let's get out and not just vote, but actually support candidates outside of Nashville.
Right.
Like,
yes.
Get in your car. You know, take ticket, bus, whatever. Go help people flip seats this year. We need you to.
Thank you so much.
Senator Campbell.
Yes.
Signy die.
Signy die.